Imagine walking into a restaurant, hungry, tired, and dressed in simple clothes, only to be judged, laughed at, and denied a seat. Nobody knows that behind those old shoes and worn coat, you are a millionaire, not one of money alone, but of experience, of heart, of values. Yet still, they mock you, just because you don't fit their image of success. This story isn't about wealth. It's about humanity. It's about how easily society forgets that dignity has no price tag. While the world chases luxury, we often lose the one thing that truly defines us: kindness. Today, you'll witness a moment that could change the way you see people forever. A moment when a poor little boy, with nothing but flowers in his hands, shows more heart than a woman who owned everything. A single act of compassion that exposed the truth about what makes a person truly rich. If this story touches you, don't just scroll away. Leave a comment. Share your thoughts. Help spread the message that no one deserves to be looked down upon. Because somewhere out there, someone is being judged by their appearance, while their heart is worth more than gold. Subscribe to the channel and share this story so more people can remember what really matters. Together, we can make kindness go viral, and maybe, just maybe, change the way the world sees people like Thomas and like you, the millionaire in disguise. In a quiet town where nobody looked beyond appearances, a man named Thomas walked the streets wearing old jeans, dusty shoes, and a coat that had seen better days. Nobody knew that behind those tired clothes was one of the richest men in the region, a self-made millionaire who had built an empire through hard work and humility. But Thomas was tired of being surrounded by people who only valued him for his wealth. He wanted to see how the world treated a man when he had nothing to offer but his heart and manners. That afternoon, he entered a small restaurant on the corner. The place was beautifully decorated from the outside, but inside it was filled with the scent of arrogance. The owner, a woman in her 40s named Clara, stood behind the counter with an air of superiority. She scanned Thomas from head to toe as he stepped in. "We're full," she said coldly, even though several tables were empty. Thomas smiled kindly. "I don't mind waiting," he replied. "I just need a warm meal." Clara rolled her eyes and whispered something to the waiter, who laughed under his breath. "This isn't a shelter," she said aloud. Thomas nodded, still calm. "I never said it was. I'll pay, just like anyone else." His voice was steady, but his tone carried the quiet dignity of someone used to being underestimated. As he waited near the door, a little boy approached him. He couldn't have been older than 9. His clothes were worn, and his hands were cold, holding a small bunch of flowers. "Would you like to buy one, sir?" the boy asked shyly. Thomas smiled, took out a few coins, and bought the whole bunch. "Keep the change," he said. The boy's eyes widened. "Thank you. My mom says kindness always comes back." Clara noticed the exchange and sneered. "Oh, so you have money for flowers, but not for real food?" she mocked. The restaurant's customers laughed softly. Thomas looked at her and said nothing. He simply sat on a bench outside, holding the flowers as the boy continued walking door to door, trying to sell the few he had left. A few minutes later, an older man, clearly wealthy, entered the restaurant. He wore a tailored suit and gold cufflinks. Clara's attitude changed instantly. "Good evening, sir," she said, smiling wide. "Your usual table?" The man nodded politely. The hypocrisy was painful to watch. Thomas sat outside, observing. He wasn't angry, just disappointed. All around him, people walked past the flower boy without noticing. A world that worshipped luxury yet ignored innocence. Then, out of nowhere, rain began to fall. The boy ran to cover his flowers, but they were already soaked. Thomas stood and offered him his coat. "You'll get sick," he said softly. The boy looked up. "But you'll be cold." Thomas smiled. I'll be fine. Inside, Clara watched through the window and laughed again. He's crazy, she muttered. To a waiter, giving away his coat to a beggar. But what happened next silenced everyone. A car stopped in front of the restaurant, a black luxury sedan. A man in a suit stepped out, carrying an umbrella. He approached Thomas with deep respect. Sir, we've been looking for you. The investors are waiting at the main office. The restaurant grew silent. Clara froze. Her smirk vanished. Thomas turned to the man. Tell them I'll be there soon. I just need to finish my dinner here. He turned to Clara. Now, may I have a table? She stuttered. Oh, of course, sir. I didn't recognize you. Please, come in. Thomas didn't enter right away. Instead, he looked at the little boy, who was now shivering near the door. He's with me, Thomas said firmly. Clara blinked. With you? He nodded. Yes, he deserves a warm meal more than I do. They sat together, side by side, while the restaurant, once filled with laughter, now sat in shameful silence. The waiter, who had laughed earlier, placed the food gently on the table, eyes downcast. The boy looked at Thomas, unsure how to behave. Eat, Thomas said warmly. You've earned it. The boy smiled shyly, his small hands trembling as he lifted the spoon. After a while, Thomas turned to Clara. Do you treat everyone like this? Or just those who seem poor? She lowered her head. I didn't mean to offend you, but you did, he said softly. And not me, him. People like him are the heart of this world. They work, they dream, and they hope. Yet people like you look down on them because of their clothes. The restaurant was silent. Thomas paid the bill, leaving a tip large enough to cover the boy's education for a year. Kindness, he said before leaving, is the only currency that never loses value. As they walked out together, the boy holding the flowers close to his chest, Thomas smiled and said, Never let anyone tell you you're small. Even the smallest flower can grow through stone. The boy nodded, his eyes shining with hope. For the first time, he felt seen. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the world seemed a little cleaner, not because of the weather, but because of one act of simple human decency. The lesson beyond wealth. Thomas and the little boy, whose name was Ethan, stepped out of the restaurant into the cool evening air. Ethan held the leftover bread from his plate, wrapped carefully in a napkin. For my mom, he said. With a soft smile, Thomas nodded approvingly. She be proud of you. As they walked down the street, the restaurant's lights glowed behind them, a silent witness to a lesson that no money could buy. The people inside had seen what true class looked like, and it didn't wear a suit. Thomas's driver followed discreetly as they made their way to the bus stop where Ethan usually waited. Where do you live? Thomas asked gently. Down by the river, Ethan replied. It's not a real house, just a small room. My mom sells flowers too. Thomas's chest tightened. Do you go to school? Ethan shook his head. We can't afford it. I help her instead. But I like reading. When I see books in the trash, I take them home. Thomas smiled. Then you're already rich in the most important way. They reached a small alley where a woman sat with a basket of wilted flowers. She looked up in surprise when she saw Ethan. With a stranger, Mama, Ethan ran to her, handing her the bread. This is Mr. Thomas. He helped me. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sir. People usually cross the street when they see us. Thomas shook his head. People forget that real beauty doesn't come from what we wear or own. He gave her a small envelope. For you, he said simply. She hesitated. I can't accept, please, he interrupted softly. Think of it as an investment in your son's future. When she opened it later, she found a note. For education, not pity. Inside were enough funds to change their lives. Thomas returned to his car, his mind heavy with thoughts. He remembered the years he had spent chasing success, the sleepless nights, the loneliness hidden behind luxury. He had become wealthy, yes, but he had also lost something along the way, the ability to feel the world as it was, raw and human. The next morning, newspapers buzzed with the story of the restaurant incident. Someone had recorded a video, Clara's sharp words, the laughter, and the moment the driver revealed Thomas's true identity. It spread quickly. Comments flooded social media. Money doesn't define a man. He's a real gentleman. Shame on that restaurant owner. Clara's business began to crumble. Customers canceled reservations. People protested outside, holding signs that read, "Respect everyone," and "Humanity over appearances." Clara tried to apologize publicly, but Thomas refused interviews. He didn't want revenge. He wanted change. A week later, Thomas reopened one of his old community centers that had been closed during the pandemic. He named it the Flower House in honor of Ethan. The goal was simple: to feed the hungry and educate children from poor backgrounds. He personally visited every week, often wearing the same old coat. One evening, Ethan and his mother came to see the place. The boy's eyes widened as he saw shelves of books, tables filled with food, and children laughing. "You did all this?" he asked. Thomas smiled. "We did, together." Over time, their bond grew. Thomas taught Ethan about kindness, patience, and self-worth. "Never let money change your heart," he told him once. Because wealth without empathy is just emptiness wrapped in gold. Ethan listened carefully, his young mind absorbing each word. Years passed. The small boy who once sold flowers became a bright student, and a young man with dreams larger than life. He earned a scholarship through the very foundation Thomas had created. One morning, before leaving for university, Ethan hugged him tightly. "I'll make you proud, sir," Thomas replied. "You already have. But life has a strange way of testing those who do good." Thomas fell ill years later. Despite his wealth, he lived simply and gave away most of what he had. When Ethan, now a grown man, heard the news, he rushed back to town. He found Thomas sitting under a tree near the community center, smiling faintly. "You came," Thomas whispered. Ethan knelt beside him. "Of course. You gave me everything." Thomas shook his head. "No, my boy. You gave me hope. You reminded me why I started." His voice weakened, but his words carried deep warmth. "Promise me something. Continue what we began." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "I promise." After Thomas passed away, thousands attended his memorial. The boy who once sold flowers stood on stage, now wearing a simple suit, holding a white rose. "He taught me that true wealth is not in what we keep," Ethan said, his voice steady, "but in what we give." He was insulted for looking poor, yet he left the world richer than any king. The audience stood in silence, some crying, others reflecting. Clara was there too, standing at the back. She had lost her restaurant, but gained humility. After the service, she approached Ethan. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly. Ethan looked at her kindly. "He already forgave you the moment he walked out of your door." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Years later, the community center expanded into multiple branches. Each one bore a plaque that read, "In memory of Thomas Gray, the millionaire who chose kindness over luxury." And beside it, a small quote that became the heart of the story. "Kindness is the only currency that never loses value." Ethan, now the director of the foundation, often stood at the entrance each morning, watching new children arrive, some barefoot, some shy, all full of dreams. He kept a single flower on his desk every day, a reminder of where it all began. at a restaurant door with a simple act of compassion. And though Thomas was gone, his legacy lived on in every smile, every meal, and every book opened by a child who finally had a chance to learn. Money had built buildings, but kindness had built souls. In the end, that was the truest wealth of all.